Hello Internet, welcome to the channel. My name's Frankie, and in today's video we are revisiting our Christmas mini zoo that we're building in franchise mode, and we are going back to the habitat that we left off on last time, which was a seal habitat that then joins on to a penguin one. Unfortunately, I appear to have deleted the first bit of footage for this habitat build, and as you can see, I've done quite a bit of rock work already, making them a nice cave and stuff, and blending in the back portion to make sure that it does look a bit more like a mountain and not just like random bits of rock and stuff. So I'm quite annoyed at myself for not having that footage, but we do have the rest of the footage, so we are at least it is only the first bit of the build that was kind of lost. We're introducing our king penguins now so that we can have a look at their terrain distribution needs, and fortunately they are kind of happy with all of their ground area being covered in either soil or snow, so we're very lucky there. We can just make sure that all the outdoor area is covered in snow, whilst inside their cave we're going to have some soil and stuff, and we can dive into using a bunch of aquatic plants in the water. These guys really have a low percentage for their coverage. They do not want many plants at all, which is completely understandable. In the Antarctic they don't really have any plants today, so having some plants at the bottom of their water source is about as much plant life as they would get in the wild anyway. And to kind of subsidize that and make up a little bit, because I like having high coverage, so to kind of put in some, we're going to just use a bunch of rocks to make sure that we do have some interesting textures and stuff and it doesn't all look too smooth. So I'm just taking various rocks from, I believe, the Tundra set and just sinking them into the floor, making sure that we have some erratic textures and different shapes and stuff underwater, so that when you're looking through the underwater viewing gallery it isn't too plain. As well as having already built the cave, I have also placed our feeder and enrichment items and stuff, and I went for a submerged feeder in this case because I really like the penguins diving animations and stuff, and it's an excellent thing for guests to experience, to be in the underwater viewing gallery and seeing these penguins dive down to get fish that are coming out right in front of them. It's quite a good experience for our guests, and I know that personally I would love to see that. If I had the opportunity to, it would be amazing to see penguins that up close and personal. Another finishing touch I'm going to do to this enclosure is I'm going to take one of the decorative wintry Christmassy tree things from the Arctic pack, and I'm going to place it up on the rocks, kind of have it be a bit of a feature up there, just a bit of decoration. And then I'm going to go over to the seal habitat as well, and the risen island I did, they can only actually access half of it. Unfortunately they're not able to go too steep, so they can't get to the top portion of it. So I'm going to place a Christmas tree up there, and I'm going to surround it with a few presents as well, because whilst these two habitats are rather nice to look at, they're not too Christmassy other than being cold. So I'm just going to start to introduce a few hints here and there that we are building a Christmas zoo. Speaking of Christmas, that is of course in the next week, and this zoo is not ready. It's not finished, which is completely fine. I'm going to make sure that it's built by the end of the year. As for when the next video will be, I'm not entirely sure. I'm thinking none of you will watch it on Christmas. So it might be either Christmas Eve or Boxing Day, the next video. But for now we're going to be focusing on the penguin habitat, and in the next video we're either going to be introducing the smallest mammal that's going to be in this zoo, or the largest mammal that's going to be in the zoo, and the largest carnivore that walks the planet. So there you go, a bit of a hint for you. Now we're going to move on from the Christmas decorations onto something pretty cool, and that is simply a barrier that's going to run around the top of these habitats. We are using the aquatic fences that you get obviously from the aquatic pack, and that's going to be part of the focus for this video. The penguin habitat itself isn't too in depth because we did all of the land sculpting and stuff in the last video, so if you want to see how we built the foundation for this habitat, make sure to watch the grey seal episode to see just how we did that. And we also built all the underground viewing areas. So in today's video we are focusing on above ground, which means we need to make sure that our guests can't just jump in and swim about with the penguins. You may not get eaten alive, but I have a feeling if they peck you, it will be quite sharp and painful. And also those seals, if one were to lie on you, you'd just be crushed, and it's not very good. Health and safety at my zoo is of the utmost importance. Yeah, I don't know why I'm going on about this so much. Yeah, we're just going to place some of the aquatic fences to make sure that none of our guests can dive into their habitats, and then we will start to make this upper area look a bit prettier. So what are we going to include in this above ground area? Well, the first thing that I know that I want to include is an area for education. Things like seals and sometimes penguins, but not as often, will often have large seating areas, kind of like a stadium or something, where you can experience shows and stuff, because things like seals and sea lions, they're very trainable. They have very articulated fins and stuff. They're able to perform tricks and whatnot. So they're the perfect animal to use for educating your guests. And I would personally prefer the idea that our zookeepers aren't doing performing tricks and stuff. They're not doing any of that. But instead they are using training techniques like getting them to lift up their fins, stand on podiums and stuff. But using these educational talks to show our guests, our general public and stuff, the importance of training animals. Because I think a lot of people still believe that if you are training your animals with the pointing sticks and stuff, and you don't really know about zookeeping too much, you will just assume that they're doing it for entertainment purposes. That is not true at all. If you want to do health checks on your animals, you need to be able to get them to go where you want and do what you want, so you can get them onto scales without having to wrestle them on there. Because how do you get a tiger to go onto a set of scales and find out if they're a healthy weight? You can't just be like pointing and going, go there please. No, you need to train them with positive reinforcement by placing food there with sticks and stuff. There's so much use from training the animals in terms of just the day-to-day of running a zoo. So I think having educational talks where it's in little stadium-y kind of things should focus on that side of the training of animals instead, rather than getting to do flips and stuff. I don't really agree with that, because that's just for show purposes. You know, the dancing monkey kind of thing, and I just generally don't agree. So what I'm going to be focused on right now is building these kind of tin huts that we're going to place our seating areas in. They're not going to be anything fancy at all. We're literally using some steel beams and some wooden planks to build the actual huts. And then, depending on what species the talk is going to be for, we will have some signage on the edge of the hut as well. So we'll have massive seal signs on one, and then the big penguin signs on the other. And we may even add some Christmas decorations, and what I end up doing is placing a nice bow in the center right at the top of the roof, and then have some garlands running to the edge of the shelter as well, just to further hint of that festive feeling, which I really need to pay attention to actually including. I don't think the snow is enough to suggest that this is a Christmas zoo. It doesn't work, because I mean, we just had the Australian pack announced, didn't we? It don't snow there. What Christmas? Right, for any viewers that are Australian, I am intrigued. Do you listen to songs like I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas at Christmas? Because you're never going to get one, are you? I don't see how that would apply there. So yeah, that's just a curious little thing. Running off on a tangent again. Let's get back to the actual build. I would just like to point out that this is potentially the first time that I've used these massive steel beams for any of the building, and whilst it may not make any technical sense, because I don't really know if this would work or not, it does add a sense of realism to the build. Like I say, even if it's not making the most sense, if it wouldn't work in the real world, it definitely gives it an authenticity, and I think it really elevates the final look of it. It makes it look a lot more man-made and kind of rustic. I mean, it looks pretty professional, because look at all the wood, it's super clean and it's all very uniform and stuff, but still it's got a very gritty look to it by having these massive metal beams suspended in midair. I'm quite a fan of these, and I think I might try and use them a bit more going forwards. I'd also like to point out that I really like these garland pieces from the Arctic pack. I think they're really pretty and add quite a lot of character really easily. And the bow that I'm adding right now, I really like that as well. I think it just adds quite a bit to it, to be honest. It gives the hut kind of a focal point, because it is basically just a big old rectangle. But at the front, having that right in the middle, dangling from the top, it gives you something to look at, which is quite nice. And like I said earlier, it ties it into the theme of this being a Christmas zoo, which is what we want to do, and that's exactly what the garlands do as well. I'm also going to place a couple of stockings either end, because otherwise where's Santa going to put the presents for all of our animals? I mean, he doesn't have to put them on the ground, does he? He needs to put them in stockings. I don't know. Yeah. And with these few Christmas decorations in place, it's time to move on to adding the massive signs on the side of these buildings. And I am really happy that we get these signs for each animal when we get a new pack of animals. I just think they are wonderful most of the time. I really like the watercolory illustrative ones that we get. I really like those. But unfortunately we don't have those for the penguin. And I kind of understand why. I mean, it's black and white, isn't it? It's kind of difficult to make it look that dynamic. But I am happy with it nonetheless. And yeah, I'm quite happy with these going on the side of the hut. But I will say, they are humongous. I kind of wish they were smaller. Yeah, I could have looked at some of the African penguin signs. I don't know what size they are. Actually, now that I talk about it, I'm remembering that the African penguin sign is made out of little tiles, isn't it? Because the North Africa theme is full of those tiny little tiles, so that wouldn't work here anyway. Okay, never mind. But yeah, I wish we could shrink these, because whilst they're really cool, that's terrifying having a penguin that big. Next up, it's time to start adding some more shops. At the moment, this zoo only has a couple shops in the entrance, and I think this is kind of the perfect location to add some. I'm going to be using the aquatic shop shells. I think they work really well with this zoo because they're all snowy themed. They've got a snowy facade on them, which is really nice. So I'm going to place two of those. One's going to be a small shop facade, and then the other one will be a large one, allowing us to have two shops. This one here is going to be a food shop, then the other two is going to be one drink shop and a balloon shop, because we need people with balloons wandering about. Don't know why, I just want that. Yeah, having the shops and stuff spread out a bit more is going to allow us to make a bit more money and keep up the guest happiness, which is always important in these little franchise mode zoos if you want to make any money. Speaking of the shops, that does mean we're going to have to place a bunch more bins. The closer to a shop you are, the more the trash is going to pile up on the floor, so allowing plenty of bins around the zoo will mean that the further the guests go away from the shops, the less likely they are to actually drop litter like straight on the ground. They'll be able to put it in bins and stuff, which is going to boost the happiness of most of your guests because they're not walking through crap all the time, basically. You may have noticed whilst we've been looking about that the flooring here is terrible. It is this weird kind of jigsaw puzzle of paths that just look no good. So what we're about to do is try and fix that by using some concrete pieces, just like we did inside the cave, sink them down to just above path level, and then cover this ground area completely with these pieces, making it look a lot more uniform, a lot more neat and tidy. And it is a very tedious process because I'm constantly having to change the orientation of these tiles to make sure that they're in line with the edge of the enclosure and stuff, and making sure it's the right height. It's quite annoying, but it's completely necessary, and it makes a really big difference, especially because it hides those curbs that I don't want, but they're automatically there because this is a raised path, because we've got the underground viewing area downstairs, so these are technically elevated paths. They automatically have these curbs, so this is kind of the only way to hide them. And once we are done with that, we can start to hide the rough edges of these concrete tiles. So how are we going to hide the rough edge to these tiles that we've placed down? Well, we're going to use a bunch of aquatic faux rocks, and not only is that going to give a nice organic edge to these areas, but it's also going to help it blend into what we've built here. All of the underground cavey area is made out of these faux rocks, and the majority of the panoramic enclosures that we've just built is also made of these faux rocks. So it's just going to make this whole area feel very thematic, uniform, all tied in together. So it's a really nice finishing touch to this area, and it allows us to kind of encapsulate it, make sure it is one closed off area by giving it a perimeter of these faux rocks. And to the left and right, we're probably not going to be building again, but behind it, right in between, kind of if you follow the middle of our two enclosures and go between the two education seating areas, that is where we're going to be building one of our biggest habitats in the zoo. I say one of, it's definitely going to be the biggest habitat. So yeah, we are at the moment just dumping loads of these rocks everywhere, trying to create a nice perimeter, and we're going to, where I know I'm not going to be building anymore, I might place a few trees and stuff as well, just to further blend out that border. The rest of this video is going to be in a nice tidy little time lapse for you, so you can just sit back and enjoy, as I don't really have that much left to say about what we've built here. Thank you so much for having watched this video. If I don't speak to you before, please enjoy your Christmas or whatever you do around this time of year. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.